Hi, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on our lab tour of GenSpace, a biomaker space, a community bio lab. I'm going to show you around. It's going to be super fun, but please do pepper questions into the chat and I'm going to try to keep the YouTube chat up as well to see if there are questions coming in there. But yes, I'm really, really excited for you all to get to see our space. It's the one good thing about this pandemic is like the opportunity for this kind of virtual engagement and a way to share what we do with a much broader audience. So thank you all so much for tuning in. And I hope that when we are able to reopen in person that you all can come and see our space live because I think it's really special. Yeah, so I thought I'd start off with a little bit of a brief presentation to just kind of set the tone, and then I'll give you the actual lab tour, and then we'll close with a little bit of show and tell for some of the projects that people do in a community biology lab or a maker space that GenSpace is. So again, please do type in the chat, let us know what's going on, what's interesting to you, what questions you have, all sorts of things that we can answer. Okay, so let me grab my slides. And presenting. Okay, cool. So yes, welcome to the Biomaker Lab Tour. Again, my name is Beth Tuck. I'm the Executive Director at GenSpace, and I'm really, really grateful to get to spend this day with you to share with you all the cool things that happen in a community lab, and hopefully to inspire you to do a little biology in your own maker spaces and come and see us sometime soon. So this is GenSpace, and we'll give you the tour. GenSpace is the world's first community biology lab, and we're a new model for open access science rooted in the neighborhood. Our goal is really to make it possible for anybody anywhere to be able to do science, to ask the kinds of questions that they want to ask that they think are important and meaningful to themselves and their communities, to make products and ideas and think about sustainability that they may not be able to do in a traditional academic setting because the incentive structures aren't there, or maybe they're not in a research lab anymore. So they have our lab as a place to come and tinker and explore and play and use biology to kind of investigate the world a little bit differently than they maybe would in other settings and other contexts. So this is our team. We're an all-lady staff, so that's kind of fun to kind of like champion the women creative technologists and makers in the world. So we're really, really excited about that. And again, we're a small team, but we're mighty, and we do an awful lot with just the three of us. So the programming that we do here at GenSpace falls into four main buckets. The first one of those buckets is our interdisciplinary hands-on life science classes and workshops. And so we teach people who maybe haven't had a biology class since high school, maybe even earlier. We teach them about biology, biotechnology, emerging life sciences tech, all sorts of topics that are related to anything kind of working with living things. That's kind of our shtick, is anything that was living. And so this is a photo from our classic class, which we call Biohacker Bootcamp. It takes you all the way through like all of the basic technologies that you would use in any sort of biotechnology experience. So you learn how to do PCR, you learn how to do, you make your own genetically engineered critter over the course of a week or a weekend, and you get a chance to actually analyze your own DNA for a commonly assessed ancestry marker. So you can actually like get a peek back into your family's history using the tools that we have just here in our lab. We also have a lot of classes that are kind of creative takes. And so in this case, we have a class like designing with mycelium, which we're going to be offering again in November. So hopefully you all will be joining us online for that. And I'll tell you a little bit more about mycelium in a bit when I can show you some of the actual products that it makes. But these are using natural products or natural living things in kind of unusual and interesting and new ways. So a lot of people think about the things that we build from nature are often extractive, like you're carving something out of wood, or you're making paper out of plant material. In this case, we're trying to grow our objects, and we're trying to think about them in a slightly different collaborating with nature kind of a frame. And then the third type of class that we have are the data science and bioinformatics classes. So if you are a computer programmer, these classes are great for you. They're really exciting and great ways to kind of apply your technical knowledge to solve a new problem. And so again, these classes right now, they're all operating online. So you're welcome to join us. They're anywhere from 3 to 6 or 8 hours in length. And they're great opportunities to learn a little bit more about biology if you're interested in these topics, and to start to explore these topics in kind of a hands-on experiential learning kind of a way. I also wanted to put a plug in for our genome editing class. I think in 2016 or 2017, we were the first people to ever teach like a public class to let people do CRISPR in our community lab. And so these are CRISPR, hopefully you all know, won the Nobel Prize this year. So that was quite exciting for us, thinking about the kind of impact, the scale of impact that this kind of technology will have in the world. And so you can come to our lab and actually get to do CRISPR yourself, which is pretty cool. You do it on yeast, not on humans. We don't do that. But it's a great opportunity to learn how this technology works and explore what those ethical, legal, and social implications are. The second bucket of programming that we have is our membership portfolio. So again, we have, like you all, a biomaker space. And so again, we'll show you around the lab in a little bit to show you what this place looks like. But artists, scientists, entrepreneurs, students, teachers, retirees, people of all stripes come to our lab to be able to pursue their own projects or work in teams. And I'll tell you a little bit more about the team projects in a moment. But to get started, I'll tell you a little bit about a couple of projects that have been kind of fun highlights for me since I've been here at GenSpace for the last couple of years. The first is a piece from a performance artist. Her name is Catherine Hamilton, and she goes by the moniker Sister Sylvester. So please do Google her and check her out because she's super cool and her work is really beautiful and interesting. She came to us a few years ago with this 60-year-old hat, and she said, "What can I do with this hat using biotechnology?" And so we started to work with her to explore the themes that had been present in this particular playwright, Bertolt Brecht's work around the horrors of war. And so she actually used this hat to extract DNA and identify people who might have worn this hat sometime in the past. And with that information, she started to construct this really beautiful performance piece that kind of talks about the history of science and technology, the history of eugenics, the history of what was going on in Berlin at the time and how it paralleled things that were happening here in the States. And then two, looking to the future and how this kinds of genetic surveillance technology could be used and how it could be misused. So she's a really fantastic performer and speaker and engager. And so definitely encourage you all to check her work out. But that's the kind of thing that artists and designers and creative types do in our lab that, that for me as science type, I would never think to do. So it's a really beautiful, beautiful collaborative space. This photo here is a picture of some slime mold that are growing. And again, I'll show you a little bit more about our slime mold in a bit, but slime mold have been just a really serious source of inspiration for creative people and for scientists for a long time. They're incredibly good at wayfinding, and they are really good at sharing resources and thinking about intelligence of critters in a system that doesn't have a brain. And so they actually have this really incredible lifestyle and life form that they're able to communicate with themselves over long distances using cellular signaling and all sorts of cool things. So people use them here in the lab. In fact, we have a class going on tomorrow, and you can learn a little bit more about slime mold. Then to use them for purposes of creation, of design, you can use them as a model for neural networks. If you're interested in AI and machine learning, slime mold are great for that, and all sorts of other kinds of applications. And then the last photo here is a device that was originated. The folks who built this machine were working in GenSpace at the time, and they and I'll show you again in the lab in a little bit. There are these little machines that are called pipettes. They're useful for picking up and dropping off little tiny bits of liquid, usually that have enzymes or DNA or other materials in them. And these guys were in the lab and they're like, this is really time consuming. And also maybe I'm not being very accurate. And so what can we do to automate this process? And so they built a home-built open source liquid handling robot, which is an automatic pipetter. And they built it using kind of a 3D printer base and then attached these pipettes to it. And over the years, this machine has evolved acknowledge it's still all open source, but now these machines are being used here in New York City to do a massive COVID testing project. So this stuff doesn't just have applications for science and research, it actually has real implications for public health. And that idea germinated here at GenSpace. So. The next type of membership programming that we have here are our community projects. And so our community projects are teams of people that get together to work on things together that they have a shared interest in. And so the two that I've featured here are our Open Plant team and our Expressive Matter Biomaterials group. Open Plant is working with these really beautiful little critters called liverworts, and they are kind of like a moss, but they're a pretty primitive plant species, and they're trying to develop the tools and technology to both grow them and also genetically engineer them to be able to do and make useful things for people. So imagine if you could produce your own medicines in these kinds of plants, then you could grow your own supply. The other kind of element of what Open Plant is trying to do is build the technology and the infrastructure to do plant tissue culture in a low cost way. And so they've built these open source plant incubators that have temperature control and remote sensing capabilities and automated imaging. And so you can watch your plants grow from wherever you are rather than having to come into a lab to check on them. On the biodesign side, our Expressive Matter group has primarily been interested in bioplastics and plastic replacement type of materials. So how can we live a more sustainable life and try to get rid of some of the really long lifespan materials that are common in our world. And so they've been exploring material objects using bioplastics and other sorts of composite materials to try to think about like ways to design with stuff that doesn't necessarily hurt the environment quite as badly. And so these are some examples of bioplastics that people have been making. You can see that they've been able to produce kind of a leather-like material using bioplastics. And by layering in bits of organic material like onion skins or garlic skins, you can create really beautiful patterns and designs. The third bucket of programming that we have here at the lab are our youth programs. We have internships and school partnerships. So these are our teens from 2019 who were working in the lab, and they were studying their skin microbiome and trying to understand if they could make new novel antimicrobial compounds that could help fight nasty public health issues like MRSA or the multi-antibiotic resistant infection. So that was one of the things that they worked on, as well as testing some of the public claims of some of these products that are like good for your microbiome or kills 100% of bacteria. How true were those claims really? And then we invite school partners and organizations to come to the lab to do hands-on science. So here, these students are painting with bacteria. They're using genetically engineered E. coli that have genes from jellyfish and coral and other critters that have really beautiful colors to make their own art and design products. And then the last bucket of things that we do at the lab are events and outreach. So last year at Thanksgiving, we hosted a Future of Food potluck. And so people brought food, and we had a design exercise thinking about what might our food production and food tasting and restaurant experience be like in the future. So you can see here, people are tasting really bland food while they're smelling an odor of turkey or cranberry sauce or mashed sweet potatoes or other sorts of things. So we had this really great experience. And then we also do outreach outside of the lab, where we go to places like Governor's Island and we fly kites and collect microbes from the air and share those images with people to kind of demystify like microbial fears. Like many people are afraid of microbes. And so we want to make sure that people understand that microbes are all around us. And in fact, they play really important roles in our ecosystems. So it helps us kind of play a role of science education and science literacy in the community. So from here, I thought we'd go ahead and dive into the tour. Stop sharing, and I will take you over to the other video. Give me 1 second. Okay, welcome. Sorry, hold on 1 second. Okay, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. Here we are in our lab. So this is our entryway, and we've got space where we have some, under non-COVID times, we would have water and snacks and other materials here by the door. There's a space for people as they're coming in to kind of hang out and sit and chat. This is often where we would have staff meetings when we were able to gather in person. And then here over on the side, you can see some photographs taken by our science communication ambassador, David Chichuka. David was working with us to tell stories about all the really cool science that happens here in the lab. And so we were able to like frame these and have a public event where he shared his work, and people wrote poems and other sorts of activities and ideas around community science. It's a really beautiful day for sharing. And then you can see our little banner, GenSpace. Our moniker is Learn, Create, Grow. And we really do try to embrace that in everything that we do. On the other side, you can see a poster from our high school students. Again, this is, I'm not able to zoom the way that I thought I would. This is a poster from our high school students, our internship program, where they were studying the skin microbiome, and they actually analyzed their own, discovering that they had certain types of bacteria on their skin that were more or less prevalent. It's just a kind of a great way for them to explore their own questions. So then as you come into the lab, the next thing that you see is our classroom space. So this is our main classroom / office space at the moment, where we have 3 small businesses who are working out of the lab at the moment. That's allowing us to kind of stay in our space, and hopefully when we're ready to reopen, we'll be able to do that. So we would normally have these chairs and tables set up for classrooms. We could do them in U shapes and another format so that people can kind of feel connected to each other. And then this in the back is like our office space. So this is where our staff sit when we are in the lab. We've got a whiteboard for teaching and learning. These cubbies are places where members can store their supplies. So as they're working in the lab, they can store their goodies here. And then this is the main wall where we'll project slides and do other sorts of teaching and learning here. So as we go through the lab, I am going to turn off the video so you don't get a little bit of a jumpy feel. But again, please do pepper questions, observations, things that you notice, questions that you have. All right. So I am taking you now into the lab. Okay, so here we are inside the lab. And one of the things I wanted to point out is that we have these glass sliding doors and these big windows. This is all purposeful by design, because we really want to make sure that what we're doing every step of the way is demystifying science and making sure that it's visible and viewable and transparent with the world. One of the things that we think is really, really important about our practice is just to make sure that people have access and people can see what's going on, so that it doesn't feel quite so scary or quite so mysterious of what's happening. So inside the lab, we have our typical kind of lab gear. This is our -80 freezer, so we can store bacteria and yeast and other critters that we would work with in the lab. We can store these basically forever in this big old machine. We have a sterile hood so that if anything is at risk for contamination, that we can make sure that we have a sterile environment to work with that. So that helps us be able to make media or things that the microbes might need to grow on. Over behind or beside the clean air hood is our Opentrons robot, and I'll give you a closer up view of that in a moment. And then here are our standard kind of lab benches. So these have all the gear that you would need to do basic molecular biology. So things like analyzing DNA or cutting and pasting DNA to make new genetically engineered critters. All of that stuff is here, provided for members and provided for class participants. So you can see these little kind of purple and white machines with the orange tape on them. Those are pipettes. That's the like classic thing that you will learn in every molecular biology experience that you will have. You'll learn how to use a pipette. And that's exactly why the Opentrons crew wanted to make a robot that could do that for them. Over here, you can see we have our chemical storage space. So again, we vet all of the chemicals that come into our lab and make sure that they're safe for use around people who have normally functioning immune systems. Everything that comes and goes into our lab is vetted for safety. And then here you can see in the middle row, we have 3 big tubs of kombucha that's brewing here in the lab. People are growing that to make kombucha material or SCOBY leather, SCOBY paper. And they're testing how that kind of SCOBY material will accept dyes and will be how color fast is it, and other kinds of material testing. We have for our members, we provide all of the basic plastics and all the basic gear that you need to do basic molecular biology. So that's what a lot of those boxes up top are pipette tips and petri dishes and other kinds of materials that you might need to do your work. And then you can see again that back row where the shelving is where members are storing some of their supplies, so they have access to all the tools and technology that they need to do their work. We also have incubators and water baths and other machines that are necessary for working with microbes. So bacteria, for example, really enjoy growing at 37 degrees, our body temperature. So this incubator here will keep them at that happy temperature. And then the water bath can be used for like making different chemical reactions happen, or if you want to make your own genetically engineered critters, usually you do a little heat shock. And so you can zap them in that little water bath that'll allow them to take up new DNA. So this is our lab. In the back, we also have a sink and a flammable cabinet so that, again, everything that we bring into the lab is stored safely and is purposefully managed so that everybody who comes and goes into this space are safe. I'm going to pause for a second. I see there's some things in the chat. Okay, no questions. I'm going to move you a little bit closer to the OpenTrons robot because I think it's really cool and it's definitely interesting to makers. Okay. So this is our OpenTrons robot. So you can see, actually, let me get a little bit further away. The machine has a pretty, not too huge of a footprint. It's probably about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet in square space. And what we have in here actually is an experiment that's going on from one of our members who is working on using a type of technology called directed evolution. And he's trying to make bacteria that can eat plastic, basically. So that's what's going on here in these Petri dishes. And you can see he's even 3D printed his own little mount for the robot. Normally the robot is used for picking up and distributing liquid, but here you can see he's built a little mount that has a camera attached to it. And all of that information is then being sent to a cloud so he can do automated image analysis and all sorts of cool things that he has built that again work for this open source robot that you can play around with. And then again here, get you a little closer to the SCOBY. So I think it's pretty amazing, but also a little stinky. So these are our kombucha brews that are growing here, and they smell a lot like vinegar. So normally in a regular science lab, you would never see an open source robot with plastic eating bacteria next to a kombucha SCOBY. And that to me is the magic of GenSpace, that so many different things can happen here in this space and lots of people can be involved. All right, so I'm going to pause again and take you back to do a little show and tell. Okay, so here on this table, we have a whole bunch of different types of objects. I'm going to get them a little bit closer, but this just goes to show you again the scale and scope of things that people work on here at GenSpace in our lab. So the first thing I'll show you is some of the artistic pieces that artists have produced here in the lab. The thing that we think is really amazing about our lab and about our community is by making the tools and technology accessible, people can start to see things and explore things and play with things that they wouldn't or otherwise normally be able to. So we have microscopes and other resources that artists and designers use to kind of draw some inspiration. So this was from our our histology, the art and science of histology class, where somebody was looking at their own cheek and also some of the, maybe the bacteria that live inside of their mouth. And they kind of sketched this out as they were imagining the stage, which is an object part of the microscope, but they were kind of imagining it as a performance and what would it look like for cells to perform on a stage. This is another piece of art from the art and science of histology workshop. You can see intricate cellular structures based on this these stained slides, and that somebody made some really beautiful pseudo-colored photography from this object. The next pieces that I'll show you are all part of our kind of biodesign suite. So these are materials and objects and things that people have created in the biodesign space that we think would be pretty interesting to you all as makers. So these materials are mycelium. This is the root structure of fungus, and they are really great because they're fire retardant. They are extremely sturdy and strong, but they're also super lightweight, and you can grow them into whatever shape you want. So this is something that has been grown to be a kind of styrofoam replacement packaging material. So you can see that it's both shapeable, but also flexible. It's pretty durable. We've had this for probably like 5 years, and you can see it's still in pretty good shape. But if you wanted to, you could toss it out in your garden and compost it. This same mycelium can be foam as like a cushion for a couch or for some furniture, or for the shoe insoles. You can imagine that these are all materials that you could create using mycelium. And again, this is all like fully biodegradable and a really great source of inspiration for thinking about sustainable living. This same material can be used to make intended longer living objects. So this is a picture frame or a mirror that was grown in one of our workshops. You can see that this is, again, an object that you would normally not think of as a thing that you would make yourself. And so that's kind of the beauty of GenSpace and the way that you can kind of use these materials all on your own. And then the last object in the back is a lampshade. So this is from designer Danielle Trophy, and she makes these really beautiful lamps that are all grown and all, again, very, very eco-friendly, earth-centered. Next, I'm going to show you some materials made out of bioplastic. And again, this is our Expressive Matter team. They have been really playing and experimenting with a lot of different recipes and resources and materials. So you can see that you can make all sorts of types of objects using bioplastics, as long as you have a mold and as long as you have the material. So we made like a little prototype of a spoon. We have a little silicone mold that you can make things in. And this is all made out of glycerin and agar and cornstarch and gelatin and a few other odds and ends materials. We will be having a class coming up, I think, towards the end of November for teaching you all how to make your own bioplastics. This is a bioplastic composite. I believe there's felted material that's been layered in with the bioplastic, but you can see then that it makes something that's pretty flexible, but also durable. It's really strong. And it's also kind of transparent. So there's all sorts of properties that you can start to create when you're working with materials in a community lab and with partners who are able to help you kind of draw new inspiration from different materials. And then finally, we were playing around with a molding technique. So this is a very flexible type of bioplastic that has a little bit of charcoal in it, which gives it its color. And so through the rotation molding process, one of our community members, Jessica Smith, was able to make this kind of cup shape material. It's not quite as sturdy as you would want to make like an actual drinking cup, but you can see that this is the start of something that could become a water bottle or, some other sort of material that could be really useful. And again, it's pretty durable. You can see that it doesn't tear super easy, but it's also got a lot of like flexibility and, different elements of this product. We have a lot of people who are interested in handmade craft kinds of products. So this is a homemade soap. And so this is a product that's generated through one of our courses and workshops called Biological Membranes. And soap making. And so you can learn organic chemistry in a way that is like very useful and practical by making soap. And it's definitely the most interesting and engaging way that I've ever learned organic chemistry. Next, I'm going to show you some textiles. This is from some of our natural dyes workshops. So this is a product that was made. All of the really beautiful dark red and purple and pink colors are variations of a dye called cochineal, which is derived from a type of insect commonly grown on the prickly pear cactus. And so this cochineal, depending on what you mix it with and which mordants you use, can create all this variety of colors, and depending on which textile you're working with, whether it's linen or cotton or silk, you can produce all these different colors. And then, so the natural dyes is paired with, again, a little peek into what the future holds in synthetic biology and genetic engineering. And so you can see there's a pattern here of a little butterfly. These are printed with bacteria paintings. So you paint your design using bacteria, and then you can stamp and press your fabric onto your plates and make these really beautiful bacteria prints. And so these, again, are genetically engineered. So you can imagine a future where people didn't need to go and extract cochineal from these insects. Instead, they could grow a culture in the lab and have it in a slightly more sustainable way. The other kind of hope for this type of work is that this kind of dyeing with these kinds of bacteria-based prints consumes less water and it consumes fewer hazardous chemicals, and also can be, what's the word I'm looking for? And it's also color fast, so it doesn't require some sort of way of staining the material to make it stay on the fabric. So those are all kind of benefits of using bacteria-based colors and pigments. And so the last thing I'm going to show you are some homemade or craft type of lab gear that we have here in the lab. And so you can see the objects that we have an open PCR, but we lent it out to another scientist to use right now. But it's basically a machine that Xeroxes DNA, it copies it for you. And so we have an open source home built PCR machine that isn't here at the lab at the moment, but it's kind of in that vein. This is an OpenFuge. This is a centrifuge. This machine spins things really fast, which is useful for like separating things. So heavy things go to the bottom and light things stay on top. So if you've got like bacteria that you're working with and you need to get rid of the media that they were growing in, you can spin them really fast. The bacteria will go to the bottom and the media will stay on top, and you can get rid of, or you can keep what you need and get rid of the rest. So that's what this machine is. Again, open source, all open hardware. You can build it yourself. This is another little gadget. This is a microscope stand for your smartphone. So you can stick your phone here. It'll view through this little lens, and then there's microscope slides that you can put in the holder, and then you can take pictures using your smartphone to see things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to see. And of course, we love our little machines like these. These are Foldscopes. These are like less than $1 microscope. You can build it yourself. It's made out of basic a basic origami kind of approach to building your own microscope. And again, basically you just slide the slide in here, and then you hold it up to the light, and then you can see things that you wouldn't otherwise see. There's a community of millions of users that are using Foldscopes all across the world. It's an incredible tool. We have, other little microscopes and devices that people can take out if they're going to go to the field. They can use these to see like what kind of critters are living in their pond or in their soil. And then of course, we have been playing around with more like home-built DIY kinds of gear like this. So this is a molecular viewer. So if some types of experiments in synthetic biology, they use color change as a signal that something important is happening. So this is a P51 glow lab from a company called Mini PCR. Definitely encourage you to check them out because they have great, teeny tiny, very cute lab gear and not so expensive materials, which is really nice. And so this little viewer has a blue LED and a couple of other kind of home built pieces. And then you can stick your tubes here and see them glow if there's DNA present or if there's RNA present or other materials and molecules. So these are great little gadgets that we have available for scientists and users and creators in our lab. So yeah, so that's basically all the show and tell I have. I think this gets us to a point where we can do a little bit of audience Q&A, hopefully. Let's see. Can you all hear me okay? Great, thank you. Yeah, so I'm happy to answer questions or go back and show you more gear. If you want to see more, you know, more logistics, I'm happy to do like a pipetting demonstration if you'd like to see what that looks like. Yeah, a lot to absorb. Yes, yeah. I think one of the things that really sticks with me about these kinds of spaces is like and it's true with maker spaces as well, right? You all know this, that the possibilities are endless, and like that is such an exciting thing, but also such a challenging thing to figure out where to start. And so to me, that's really one of the critical pieces that we as GenSpace can do, is provide a place to start. So whether that's taking a class or joining a community project, you don't feel like you have to go at it fully alone. You can be part of this bigger community that will help you ease your way into this really, really exciting new world of bio and biotech. And I see someone in the chat has asked, is there a network of biospaces that shares ideas and resources? That's such a great question. Yes, the DIY and community bio movement is like very much a distributed network. There's labs now basically in every major city across the US. And then across the globe. And so that this movement is growing globally in a really, really, really rapid way. So people are doing DIY and community biomaking in places like Lima, Peru, and the Yucatan, and South Africa, and Tokyo, and everywhere that you can imagine. There are people who are making with biology and creating new products and designs and materials. So the way that people kind of connect and share ideas and resources, there are several different ways. There's a listserv that some folks are using to just kind of send stuff directly to other community lab organizers and users and learners. There are a bunch of different Facebook groups that people are in, and so they are sharing protocols and resources and saying, hey, has anybody ever done this? And someone will chime in, yes, I tried it and this didn't work for me in this way. So they're really like engaged with each other digitally. And then the third way that people are pretty engaged with each other is every year the MIT Media Lab hosts the Global Community Biology Summit. The intention is to organize the community and have a space for people to both learn and share. And as the community has kind of grown and evolved, we have been thinking a lot about what does it mean for this to be a movement, and how do we organize so that we can really like maximize impact and welcome more learners into the biology space. So this year's conversation really focused around like governance. What does it mean to have like an organized team to make community biology happen? So definitely these are ongoing questions. And if you're interested, just Google the Global Community Biology Summit. That will pop up, and soon, hopefully, they'll be posting all the videos from this year's summit on YouTube, so you can check those out. Yes. And so thank you for the comment from YouTube. I'm really happy to hear your excitement for the materials. I think it's really amazing. And again, to me, none of this is me. It's none of this is my idea. None of this is my product. It's like the wisdom of the crowd and the ideas that people bring to each other and the creativity that they bring to each other. That to me is what's really special about this kind of space. And I think it's true for maker spaces too. Like it is about the kind of convening power that a localized group of people working together on a thing can create. Thanks, Jenny. Jenny says that they saw several new tools to check out. Yeah, I'm happy to share some additional links. Actually, why don't I go ahead? I can show you one of my favorites places to go if you want to just get started and kind of learn a little bit more about community bio. Is this? Do this group. I don't know much about them, to be totally honest, so you'll have to dig a little bit more deeply. But this Gowdy Labs, they have a whole bunch of sets of materials and how-tos for building your own labware. So if you want to do a digital microfluidics, you can build your own. They're even showing how to do a PCR, make your own mini PCR kind of a deal. So as they're opening, or as they're kind of opening the door into how some of this technology works, you can learn how to build and make your own. A few years ago, there was a really, really big interest in DIY bioprinting. That seems to have kind of like lowered in interest over the years, but I'm hoping that people will want to resume that and build their own bioprinters, because I think it's really exciting to think about the possibilities with this kinds of technology, both printing substrates or like materials for cells and bacteria and microbes to grow on, but also 3D printing the cells themselves to make new structures and organs and whatever sorts of things, or templates for what that could look like in the future. But yeah, you can see, I mean, they've got all of this is just here on their website. Again, here's the like open source PCR machine, DIY microscopy. There's all sorts of goodies that you can find. And I believe the other source that would be useful for folks to look into is Open Wetware. So again, this is like people from all over the world that have been sharing resources, protocols, materials, places where you can find the things that you need to get started with bio. You can send those links in the chat. Do folks have any other questions or thoughts or ideas or things that they want to know? I should mention too, the on the materials side, there is a great resource. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I'll find it real quick. It's called Materium. Send the link. And I'm a biologist by training, so the material side is all new to me. I'm learning it along with all of our incredible creators. I'll find it real quick. Yeah, Materium. So this is a great resource if you're interested in biomaterials. Again, I'll do a little quick screen share so you all can see it. Nature's Recipe Book. You can see it really is built for people to learn how to DIY with biomaterials. So you can see clementine peel plastics and cornstarch leather and all sorts of other materials that people are really interested in playing with. And what's really nice, I think, about this, this resource is that because they have this like open source library, you can kind of search by like, what do you have or what would you like to make something with? And then it has recipes and collections and other sorts of materials that you can see how people have been working with this stuff. Take it with a grain of salt that all of these are like people's best guesses at materials and resources. So, you know, the important thing for you all to think about as you're starting to dig into biology and biomaterials and biodesign is like your process it is experimental and is like iterative. So test things out, try it out, see how it goes, learn from it, document your process, and then keep tinkering and keep exploring, and then you're going to come up with something really incredible. Yeah, so I think that's really it for me. Thank you all so much for joining me. I'm really happy to get to spend this day with you and share with you some of the stories of really wonderful people that work here at GenSpace, that are members here, or that have been here and then have moved on to do other amazing creative projects. Like it's a really special place, and I hope that you all will consider biology in your making practice soon.